Hey, this I'm a little bit late. Apologies. This is just a reminder, another session on how to write your research dissertation. It's open for everybody, whoever wants to join. I'm going to be answering questions, and I'm just logging into the second channel. There are two channels, and I'm using both channels in case there's a technical problem with the first one. So I'm logging into the second channel, going live. Okay, so we're in both channels. This is AI School. Second channel is Oxford e-research. Sharing screen, entire screen. Sharing screen on the second one. Entire screen. We're set up on both channels. So we have here the AI School Oxford. Hold on, let me select the arrow. Demo Pro. Okay. So this is on the first channel, AI School Oxford, and we are also streaming on the second channel, Oxford Research School. Slightly delayed today. Didn't even manage to get my coffee. So let's see if you have any questions. I'm not going to be checking my email because I'm screen sharing. And then people are going to be able to see your emails. So you're going to have to send me messages here. Or if you insist, then I can check the emails on my phone. But preferably, you're going to ask questions here because these sessions would be recorded and you can rewatch them later. Again, this is a session to help you with your writing your dissertation. Any questions that you might have, this is a good place to ask. So I'm going to be checking for questions, and there is no questions so far. Okay, I'm going to start talking, and if nobody joins in, if nobody asks anything in 15 minutes, I'm going to end the stream, and I'll come back next week. So last week we spoke about research methodologies. So we didn't really get much time to discuss different research methodologies because there were some questions that I had to answer. So let's continue on research methodologies. Methodology, research methodology for dissertation. And here I'm just going to go to images and I'm going to look for a research methodology. If you cannot hear me, let me know. Let me actually check the sound. If we hear you in a duplicate, maybe because you have both windows open. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have both windows open because on my side it's going to be just one. Your speaker is feeding the mic and there's a lag. Okay. Can you try to, if you had both windows open, can you try to switch to close one window or to at least mute it somehow? So you hear, for example, in the video, you're gonna find a mute button. So at least try to mute the button because the lag could be caused by slow internet. So my internet is unfortunately very slow, and yes, okay. So if anybody else has the same problem, if you streaming on the two channels, just switch off the microphone on one channel, and then it's gonna work. Now I'm gonna continue with research methodology until you guys come up with some question. So let's say this is a good image. I've seen this image many times before, and actually most people use it in some level. So at the broader level, you have what they call research philosophy, and many supervisors they don't really want to talk about that because it's confusing the students, and they don't want to confuse the students. They want to make it easier. And actually, many academics still don't understand the differences between research methodology and research philosophy. So let's talk about that. Let's make sure that you understand it. Research philosophy refers to things like positivism, realism, interpretivism, pragmatism, and you can check those individually. So you would see which one do you belong in, or in which group does your dissertation belong in. But in general, they mean, do you see the world as something that you can uh, pragmatically assess? Is it something that you can realistically assess, or is your research philosophy and your research problem that you're analyzing, is it something that is a little bit abstract? Another distinction in terms of research philosophy that you're going to adapt for research dissertation is, are you interpreting data? Are you interpreting an event that is happening? So let's say is usually interpretism is used in historical context when events have already occurred. Let's say you analyze uh, Talos. Talos was the very first origin, the very first idea of, at least the first recorded idea of AI. It came from ancient Greeks. So long before we had machines and we knew how to build them, we wanted to build them. So if you wanted to analyze that, the historical perspective, and you're interpreting events that they happened in the past, or that they're happening at present. So why is the computer security in this present day not as advanced as it should be? So those are just different philosophies, and it will help you if you think about every research has its own approach. So you have research philosophy, you have it, it's in your head. You have already determined that you're gonna use a specific type of research, just that you don't know in which of those four groups you belong. And it might be helpful to distinguish, to see in which group you are, because then you can research more from other researchers to see how they have tackled similar problems, and that will give you ideas. So, and it's all about ideas, it's all about making your process easy. For example, if you choose positivism, it's usually quantitative approach, and then you don't know where to start, but you read few research papers that they have used positivism, that will give you an idea where to start. Now let me check if these questions. I'm using ResearchGate to see paper tags and mentions. I found it super helpful to see the popularity of paper. Do you recommend that apart from Scopus and Web of Science? No, no. And by the way, Jesus, you don't have to use your real name. You can log in with a different name if you want. There's a settings in YouTube that you can change if that matters to you, because these are recorded session. But if it doesn't matter, for me, it doesn't matter. So, do I recommend using ResearchGate? No, I don't. Why? Because when your dissertation is going to be marked, it's going to be marked by people that you don't know. You don't know who is going to mark your dissertation. Sometimes maybe you do, but quite often you don't know. And you don't know what is the opinion of that person about using more modern tools like ResearchGate. Um, if you use those tools, you need to be very clear why that approach is better. But you leave a window of vulnerability here, because the examiner might feel ResearchGate, anybody can publish on ResearchGate. ResearchGate is not a peer reviewed database. Scopus is peer reviewed. Web of Science Core Collection is peer reviewed. Not only that is peer reviewed, but only the selected, uh, So let me open ResearchGate just so you know. ResearchGate. Just so instead of you looking at this infinity screen, you can look at the ResearchGate. So what is ResearchGate? ResearchGate is a preprint server. You can go there, you can join in for free, you can log in, and you can start uploading papers. You can write whatever, and you can upload it there. It's not peer reviewed, it's a preprint server. Now, if you publish something and then you want to print a preprint, ResearchGate is very helpful. I use ResearchGate for many reasons. but it's not something that I'm going to recommend. So the question is here, do I recommend using that in combination with Scopus and Web of Science? No. ResearchGate is not peer-reviewed. Scopus is including only peer-reviewed research. Web of Science is only including peer-reviewed. You can use ResearchGate in a slightly lesser extent than Google Scholar, because even Google Scholar includes some non-peer-reviewed, but they're similar. So that's, I hope that question answers it. Mm, there's obviously different opinion about this. There could be a paper published on ResearchGate that has attracted a lot of attention and it's never been published in a formal journal, but that is very very rare, almost never. Um, Papers that are published on ResearchGate and not published on a conference and journal usually include some form of intellectual property that the authors they don't want to share with the journal. So they want to be fully in control of that paper, and that's why they share it as a preprint. Publishing in a journal means that you're giving away some of your uh, intellectual property ownership, so they can sell it, for example, if you don't pay the open access fees. But let me give you a very short answer. Should you use ResearchGate? Use it very carefully. You're leaving a window of opportunity because for examiner to mark you down, because ResearchGate is not a peer-reviewed. Scopus is, Web of Science is. Use those, and then complement them with some work on ResearchGate. And let's think about this differently. All the research papers that are published on Web of Science and Scopus, they are not on ResearchGate. So if you're checking popularity of one paper, you're only checking popularity of one paper in comparison to a select group of papers that they are published on ResearchGate. Not every paper is on ResearchGate. If you're comparing Web of Science or Scopus, you're comparing popularity of those research papers in their own peer group. Um, but this is going to get boring, so I think I've answered the question enough. Let's see if there's a follow-up. There's no follow-up. Let's see on the other screen. There's no follow-up. Okay, let's continue. So we covered what is research philosophy and why is it important? Because it's important because if you check those four different types of research philosophies, you're gonna decide in which group do you belong, and that's gonna open some windows. And then the second step is slightly different. So let me change, if I can, the cover. Okay, so change the cover. So the second step is the methodology. How is the methodology different than research philosophy? Methodology is more specific. Here you have an approach that you're going to use. Philosophy is just how you see the problem. How do you see the investigation? Do you see it as interpreting an event? Do you see it as quantitatively assessing the event? Do you see it as a case study where you qualitatively assess the event? Do you see it as a realistic perception of the world? That is research philosophy. Research methodology is when you actually choose a method that fits your research philosophy. So you see, we have here quantitative method. That quantitative belongs to positivism because that's a quantitative approach. It doesn't have to, but usually it does. It doesn't have to. You can quantitative and qualitative are two methods that you can apply to both, but usually positivism and quantitative methods are assessed go jointly. Why? Because positivism usually has hypothesis. So you have a hypothesis and you have to prove or disprove hypothesis. And that is only done with hypothesis testing. For realism or for interpretivism, you can have a research question. You don't have to have a research hypothesis. And for research question, you can answer that with mixed methods or complex mixed methods or mono methods. Uh, so you see here, it's very much of what kind of research methodology it is. Then the talk is about strategy, and the difference between research strategy, and research methodology is very small. Actually, they belong to the same chapter. So once you pick one of those, you have to associate it to a specific strategy. Are you conducting an experiment? That's usually PhD. Are you conducting a survey? Usually a PhD. If you're analyzing existing surveys, that's not PhD. That doesn't have to be PhD. That can be bachelor's or master's because you're analyzing secondary data. So if you're analyzing secondary data from experiments or from surveys, that can be master dissertation. But to conduct your own survey, that's usually a PhD or even higher. Action research, that can be PhD, can be master's. Usually it's PhD. Why? Because with action research, you're researching an action as it's happening, and that takes time. Let's say you only have, let's say, 3 months to finish your master dissertation or your bachelor's dissertation. But action, oh, that's archival. Oh, sorry, action research is here. I'm talking about that one. Archive research. It's both PhD and MS, masters and bachelors, all those apply archives research, because you have to look at what happened in the past. So looking at the archive is always a good thing. And archive research is usually combined with case study. So those two, they go hand in hand usually, because to conduct the case study you need to have some kind of data. And case study also goes well with ethnography. That is a research strategy. And I know many people now, they're like, I'm a computer scientist. Yes, but this is a master dissertation. This is a bachelor's dissertation. It's a PhD dissertation. It doesn't mean that if my PhD is in engineering, um, and my bachelor's is in computer science, and those are the same methods that you apply to write a good dissertation. You can write a crappy dissertation, just write code, but with no philosophy, with no methodology, just write. But that's not really a dissertation, isn't it? Dissertation is when you choose your question, you choose the research philosophy that you're going to use to address that question, you choose a qualitative or quantitative methodology, then you choose a strategy. Uh, and all of those strategies are available to you. Action research, for example, that's more PhD. Grounded theory, it's very I used my PhD is in engineering science, and I used grounded theory, action research. I used case study, archival records, survey, experiments, and narrative inquiry. The only thing that I didn't use from those strategies was ethnography. Why? Because you have a problem and you have to try many, many different approaches to solve it. That's a PhD. Masters is usually you have to be really careful what you're trying to conclude so you don't expand too much, because with master dissertation, the idea is, and bachelor's, the idea is that you studied a course, studied bachelor's degree, you studied master's degree. And in the dissertation, you are applying the techniques that you learned in your master's degree. That's it. So you shouldn't really be discovering new knowledge. PhD, you need to discover new knowledge. With master dissertation, you need to show your analytical skills. You need to show that you can use those approaches. And so those are the strategies that you can apply. And then you need to choose a time horizon. This is also important, and many people would disagree, but you cannot study the entire section of the time since the time has happened. So, are you going to use longitudinal or cross sectional or snapshot in time? Are you going to take a snapshot of the last 5 years and use that? And then you have to argue why you didn't choose those two. Why did you choose snapshot in time? And the final thing that you need to choose, and unfortunately, in our course, we don't even teach techniques and procedures anymore. So the techniques on data collection are not something that we teach. Um, but it's important. That's why I have these virtual coffees. So I can talk about, the world is a free place. I can talk whatever I want in my free time. Why is it important that you study data collection and data analysis? Because many master students on a computer science program, they think that they need to go and collect primary data, and you don't. You can use secondary data. As I said, the main goal is that you show that you can use the techniques that you learned through your course. It's not, the main goal is not to discover new knowledge. Usually, those data collection, primary data collection, is part of a PhD. So when you study for a PhD, you have to prove something, that you have to develop new technique, new knowledge, something new, novelty. novelty is a fundamental part of a PhD. And how you do that? Well, you write some algorithms and you write some test results, you build some blockchains, and then something doesn't work. And you go and find the CEO of Oracle, of Chainlink, and you ask him a few questions about why this and that, and then you compare it with the CEO from Ethereum on why oracles are not working. You conduct 10, 15, 20, 100 interviews, and you discover why specific thing is happening in the way that is happening. So that's new knowledge. And thanks to that new knowledge, you can build a new oracle that is going to fix that problem that you identified. So that is a PhD. In masters and in bachelor studies, usually you use secondary data. Even in PhD, most of my PhD included 50% secondary data, 50% primary data. So in my master's degree, I had primary data, but that lowered the mark. It didn't actually improve the mark because I wasted so much time conducting interviews and case studies when I could have just extracted a file from Hugging Face, for example, a secondary data file, and run the analysis. So where do you get your data? Hugging Face, it's a good place. And maybe in the next week session, if there's interest, I can talk about databases. So if there's interest, but you're gonna have to ask me. So you're gonna have to ask me a question, talk about databases, because for some reason in the course that we teach, they have discontinued that part, databases, and I don't want to force something. Maybe they had a good reason. Maybe students didn't understand it. Maybe it caused confusion. Maybe it was too much. I don't know why. But if you're interested, you're gonna have to ask me. Next week, I'm gonna talk about different databases, and I'm not gonna talk about just Web of Science and Scopus. I'm gonna show you, for example, where to extract data files and start the analysis with different tools. So that's what I can do. One, for example, if you're looking at vulnerabilities, CVE is a good database that's part of NIST. It's open source, you can extract all the vulnerabilities. Another good database for common vulnerabilities is MITRE. I use that all the time. OWASP is another one. If you're trying to use databases for using artificial intelligence for, let's say, brain functioning, I have a whole list of 10, 15 different databases on how brain reacts in virtual reality environments, which is a very sensitive topic. And if you conduct that, you have to go through hurdles and hurdles and hurdles of ethical approvals. But there's secondary data that has been approved that you can extract, run the analysis tomorrow. Simple and easy. And those are approved by research bodies, not by me. Hugging Face actually is not approved by research bodies, so you can extract the data and hope that the data is okay, but everybody can upload data voluntarily. The same like ResearchGate. Anybody can upload a paper voluntarily. So the databases that I can show you are the ones that they have been checked by NHS, for example. Anyway, so this is probably where we should stop it. Let's see how many minutes has been and if there's any more questions. Aha, there was a second question that was retracted. So I'm going to spend a few seconds to see if that question is going to be repeated or if it was asked in the other channel. But if I don't see, is Grammarly allowed for grammar and spelling checking? Is it's also used AI? Hence, why I'm asking. Be very careful. Be very careful. I'm not a native English speaker. Yeah, so the question here is if you are not a native English speaker, is Grammarly allowed? Let's look. Yeah, so it's integrated in my own version. So those are different things that you can write. And this is Grammarly. So I have my own Grammarly. That's why I wanted to open to show you that I use Grammarly. But um, when you're writing a dissertation, it needs to be your own unique work. Now, this is a debatable question, but again, if you use Grammarly and if you include it, you leave a window of opportunity for somebody to say, "Well, these are not his words. These are words of an AI built machine. Actually, the universities are advancing in this. So even with ChatGPT, University of Oxford has made some. So Oxford ChatGPT education. So since Oxford and AI, since the last time we spoke, you see this news? This is very new. This is from the 4th of March. So it's been like 10, 15 days, but last time we spoke, I showed you how to use OpenAI and I showed you why it's problematic, right? I showed you the problems with OpenAI, that it hallucinates and all that, why you shouldn't use it. And it's the same with Grammarly. It's not your word. What it's going to say, if you don't check it properly, it could say whatever it wants to say. But slowly, the universities, and here I know that many people in university would hate what I'm saying. So that's why I'm going to keep this window open. I'm going to keep it in the background to say there are people who want to do things the old-fashioned way. They're not going to change. So let's say your examiner is one of those people, and he sees that you use Grammarly. Instantly, he will have a negative opinion about your work. He will think that Grammarly wrote that text for you, that you don't have the intellectual capacity to write. Is that correct? No, it's definitely not correct. Is we use Microsoft Word every day. Microsoft Word is spell checking your work. Microsoft Word is improving your grammar. So how is Grammarly different than Microsoft Word? What is different is that it's a little bit better. And that little bit better raises eyebrows because now in the past, for example, to have, let's say Oxford, you talk about Oxford. What was one of the tests of entering Oxford back in the old days? Well, one of the final tests were after you passed all the interviews that they would invite you for a dinner, and they would give you all the different knives and plates, and also to see if you know which spoon is for a dessert, which spoon is for cutting fish, which spoon. How is that important today? It's not important. And if you think how Oxford is changing, how universities are changing, actually, here is the Radcliffe Observatory, but here there is a building. Where is that building? The University Press is somewhere behind this. So just behind this building, so if you go in that direction, it's going to be the old Oxford University Press. And in the old Oxford University Press, back in many centuries ago, if a woman lady was walking on the street after 7 p.m., she would be arrested because women were not allowed to walk at night. They were considered prostitutes, and they would be arrested and they would be imprisoned in a building just behind this Radcliffe Observatory, in what used to be the old Oxford University Press. Now it's part of the Bodleian Library. And then the vice chancellor would have to go in the morning and talk to those women to decide if the woman was a person of good character or if she was a prostitute. Today in Oxford, we have a female vice chancellor. So many things will change. You see, Oxford is making a shift towards using artificial intelligence. I spoke about this in the last week, and I'm going to speak about it again, although it's going to upset my bosses and many people who are a little bit older. Um, AI is here. AI is not going to go away. But be careful how you use it because it might take a little bit of time for universities to adapt to its use. And as you can see, from 4th of March, Oxford University has a collaboration to advance the research in education. You can read more about this here. So, Bodleian Library AI are announcing that plan. So it's a very interesting article. How I think that somebody was able to push somebody here. I don't know, but somebody who has open ideas about, and the voices that they are against it have been sidelined a little bit. But if you're the person who is marking your dissertation is somebody who hates AI use in education and you use Grammarly, that can lower your mark. Maybe he'll think, well, this guy doesn't have the intellectual capacity to write a sentence. It's a valid argument. It is a valid argument. Everybody has the intellectual capacity to express his own thinking. Even if it's not in your native language, your mark is not going to be dependent on the use of language. Your mark is going to be dependent on how analytical you are. You only, I don't know what's the Oxford for this specific program that I'm currently on, but in my previous program in Cambridge, we had a maximum of 10 marks for use of language and grammar. So if you had the best, the most perfect Oxford English language in your dissertation, or if you had the worst English that is barely passing that limit that people can understand, the score was only 10%. Now, 90% was on how analytical you are. Do you use Grammarly or not? I cannot really direct that because by the time somebody watches this video, maybe in 5, 10 years' time, everybody is going to be using AI tools, OpenAI, Grammarly, yada, yada, yada. But today, be careful because today it's still prohibited. Um, okay, so that was the last question. There's no more question. This has been 30 minutes. So here's my clock. I'm trying to keep these sessions to 30 minutes because people won't join. If it's a virtual coffee, right? So if you make the session last like I don't know 2 hours, people just won't join. Actually, on the stream, as you can see here, everybody is left. So there's zero people on the stream. I'm just talking to myself now. Maybe people will rejoin, but 30 minutes is enough. I will see you next week in exactly the same time. And next week, if you're interested, we're going to be talking about data. But somebody has to send me a message because I can only talk about things that you're interested in. So if you're interested in survey, I'm going to talk about survey. If you're interested in case study, I'm going to talk about case study. If you're interested in grounded theory, I can talk about grounded theory. I don't know what people are interested in, people that listen today. So you have to tell me. If not, I'm going to pick one of those at random and I'm going to talk about it next week. Okay, ending. Where do I end this stream? That's the question now. End stream, okay? End, okay. End stream, end.